Before we start, I would like to ask your help to do two things. First, tell a friend or two who you think might like the show. And second, please rate and review the show on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. The more reviews the show gets, the more likely it will even appear in search results. Thank you, and now on to the show.
They make the trek out to Burning Man for a week and a day. After a lot of work, oh, there's a lot of play. Party, 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 drama, 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 bitch, bitch, bitch. Year after year, they come back to scratch that itch. They all say their lives have been changed. After many years, lives have been rearranged. That change is what this show is all about. You'll see the impact of Burning Man up and out. So sit back, relax, and cancel all your plans. These are the stories about the shadow of the man.
Hello, and welcome to the Shadow of the Man Show. I'm your host, Andy. No one special, just that Andy. Today, our guest is Justin Credible. Welcome.
Thank you, Andy. It's so nice to be here.
Yeah. Well, as we were talking about, it's a bit rainy for me. This episode's going to come out in June, so this will all be old history. But recording this in the Ides of March, right? Or what's today, the 21st or something? Yeah. No, a little more than the Ides of March.
The deluge that came down on Hawaii.
Yeah. Well, hopefully Burning Man this year will be drier than Hawaii is now.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah. So what was your first year? So we were talking about, you were actually Empress Zoe in 1996 in the opera.
Yes, but let's go back even before that. So
yeah. All right.
I unlike almost every other person I know, actually grew up on the playa.
Really?
Yeah. So my father was an archaeologist and a geologist, and we would spend most summers on the playa in the area, Sheldon Antelope Refuge, Smoke Creek Desert, really Pyramid Lake, all over. So yeah, that was really one of my formidable memories, my earliest memories as maybe a 3 or 4 year old. We used to come out to the middle of the playa in my dad's van, and often it was my mom and dad and I. Most of the time it was just my dad and I, and we would, it was a vast expanse. It's the vastest expanse of wide open land in the Western Hemisphere. Wow. It goes on for 90 miles in its length and 30 miles at its most width. You can see it from space. My dad was a bit obsessed with the desert. And so I remember being, like I said, about 3 or 4 years old, and we were setting up, we would bring the van out and kind of set up a little camp. And they were setting up the camp, and I was a pretty gregarious young one. I remember looking out at that vast open playa, and I remember no one really paying attention to me, which really never happened because I was always either taking my clothes off, running, because I was a feral desert child, running away. Like, I would have been one of those kids if they had leashes back then. So I remember looking at both my parents. They weren't paying attention to me, and I just ran. And I ran and I ran and I ran. Not, I was only 3 or 4 years old.
Uh-huh.
And not too far, but I remember being, kind of a ways out, and I just sat down, and it was incredibly quiet, and it was so peaceful. And then I remember kind of looking back and just seeing my dad just lean up against the van. And, clearly no one was coming out to get me. And I couldn't really go that far. And so they just let me be. And I sat out there for a while, and then I got hungry and I came back in, and but so then for the entirety of my life, my father and I would jump in the van and go out to the playa, do archaeological surveying. He was constantly saying things like, Justin, do you see the stratification in the rock over there? That's during the early Pleistocene when the Lake Lahontan was this. So I knew a lot of the history and geology and archaeology of the area. My father was an honorary member of the Paiute tribe. He designed the visitor center at Pyramid Lake. He was an avid photographer, got some incredible photos of the area. We found, I have a whole collection of arrowheads, points from his adventures. So that was really my homeland.
So did you grow up like in like Gerlach or something? Or
Reno.
Reno. Oh, okay.
I'm a 7th generation Nevadan.
Wow.
One of my relatives was born in Genoa, Nevada, and he was the first white male to have been born in Genoa, Nevada.
Wow.
Yeah. So, very much a history of that was my ancestral land.
Wow.
Yeah.
So like I take it this was like maybe like what, the 70s or something like that. Like you guys are
Yeah, well, yeah. So I was born
roughly.
in 68.
Okay.
So seven. I'm real bad with years, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But
No,
yeah,
because I was
around.
born 71 and like I remember like we would jump in the car like and take camping trips and stuff like back in the day, but I was just trying to imagine because we would go to like places like Vermont. It would be like a lake, woods. But I was just imagining it was like my family like took me out to the desert. I mean, that would be beautiful, but
Well,
your
it
first taste
was,
of
but
like freedom, like you can run out to the middle of nowhere. Then they're just like, where are you gonna go? Like
yeah,
you'll come
where are you
back.
gonna go? It was sort of complicated for me because I grew up in Reno, and many of my friends were quite wealthy, and their parents owned casinos, and they would go to Hawaii, or they would go, on their breaks, they would go any place else but the middle of the desert. And I struggled to find any friend who wanted to go to the middle of the Black Rock with me and my dad. So
Mm-hmm. Hmm.
um sometimes it felt a little bit like, here we go. I guess I got to spend, a few weeks in the desert with my dad. Um and it was a little bit lonely, but looking back, of course, I cherish those memories and those adventures. And we did things like he was hired by the BLM to document the wild horses. Excuse me, that at one point the wild horses had completely taken over the desert. They
Really?
were breeding out of control, and they were not in good health, and they were corralling them so that they could kind of help the what do you call a group of horses?
Heard?
Herds.
Yeah.
The herds, thank you. They would corral these herds, and then either adopt out the healthy ones, but then also put down the unhealthy ones. And I mean, there were hundreds and hundreds of wild horses not indigenous to the area. They were
Hmm.
also ruining a lot of you know uh just they were not doing well for the desert. So
I mean, how do they survive out there? I mean, I guess there's sources of water.
there's a lot more water than you think.
Yeah.
Um, and there's been donkeys, wild burros out there as well, but neither one. They were all brought over by the Spanish. So, but I remember as maybe a 13-year-old. So he taught me to drive when I was quite young, because if we were in the
Why
middle of
not?
nowhere,
Yeah.
I would have to drive out. And I'll never forget, I learned to drive on the playa, and I was, in this Volkswagen van, and the clutch, and we had to put a little thing of wood on the clutch so I could get the clutch. But he spied this huge herd of wild horses, And he said, okay. And get in the, I got in the driver's seat, and he strapped himself to the top of the van, and he instructed me to drive through the middle of the wild horses so that he could get these shots, and meanwhile there are wild horses galloping next to my window, and I'm trying desperately not to hit a wild horse at 13 years old.
Oh my God.
So it wasn't just hanging out chilling. It was a lot of
Adventure.
geology and finding caves with Paiute artifacts, and a lot at Pyramid Lake, a lot of time at Pyramid Lake. That's where I was baptized, as it were. My parents weren't religious, but my father was adopted, and his family was like, you have to baptize her. So he said he took me out there and went ooba dooba dooba dooby or something, and just put me in the water. So cut to, I moved out when I was 15 from my parents' house. It was pretty tumultuous. And then I moved in with my aunt, moved out when I was 18, and I moved to the Bay Area.
Okay.
And during that time, I would come back, obviously, visit my family. So my dad continued to go and be in the desert, and he had a story one time. And I don't even know what year it was, but he was out on the playa camping by himself, and it was late at night. And I'm not sure if you've ever been on the playa when there's no one there, but it's incredible. It's a level of quiet that you'll probably never experience in your life. And like, you can hear a bird's wings when they fly past. So he was out there, and he kept hearing, ooh, yeah, ooh, from across the playa.
Huh.
Exactly. And so he packed up his gear, and he said, I got to find out what's going on. And he packed up his gear, he stopped, he drove, he listened, and he came upon, I think, what was one of the first playa burns. And he, I don't know as far as his interaction with it, but he came back and he told my mother and I, you won't believe what I saw on the playa. There were, people, and they were burning effigy of a man, and people were naked. And I mean, he loved it. He used to go out there and, take acid and take mushrooms.
Oh,
And
really?
I grew up with my parents saying, whenever you're ready to take mushrooms, Justin, just let us know. I mean, I did mushrooms with my parents regularly. Not regularly, but quite a bit, quite a few times.
Like when you were a teenager, or like?
Yeah, when I was older, probably 19, somewhere like that.
Okay.
But the three of us would go out into the desert. I was actually kind of one of those kids who, because it was all there at my fingertips, I said, no thanks.
Yeah.
I was kind of an Alex P. Keaton, I didn't want to have anything to do with these hippies. And so, I had moved to the Bay Area. But then, so we just kind of blew it off. Like I said, Dad, what were you on? Like, what did you see all these? Well, that sounds crazy.
Sure. It was the playa leprechauns. Oh, I know what you're talking about.
Exactly. And
so wait, when did you move to the Bay Area? Well, this must have been like what, the 80s or like mid to late 80s or something?
87, 89, somewhere in there. I graduated from high school in 1987. So I think, yeah. So somewhere in there. And then, so I was familiar with Burning Man, or at least the initial kind of incarnation of it.
Did you do like a cacophony society stuff, or like
no, just through my father?
Oh, just through your father.
Experiencing it.
Oh, okay.
Then, so I'm making my way in the Bay Area. I loved it. I really felt like I could express myself. I felt like racially it was so much more diverse, which Reno was so white at that point. Yeah, it's it's way different than it was when I was growing up there. But I was working on a music video. I got into film. I worked on a film called Rising Sun with Philip Kaufman, and that catapulted me into a bunch of other film projects. One of which was a music video. And I was doing set decoration for this music video, and I met this guy named Leo Nash, and we hit it off. And Leo, he kind of asked me, I said, I'm from Reno, and he said, oh, and he's sort of, I don't know if I'm trying to recall if he told me about, the Burning Man, but so we became friends, and he said, we are having this party at our house. You should come. And at that point, again, I really wish I could remember years a little bit better, but I came to Will and Crimson's house as a wee 25-year-old, and I went to one of the first sort of decompressions. There were maybe 30 or 40 people there. Will, Crimson, Leo, sort of just the cast of characters that were the core group of organizers. I did my first whip it. I remember Crimson saying, hold it in, hold it in. So
don't pass out.
Yeah. And then I was at the craft service table, as it were, the snack table, and started chatting with this man and told him, I'm here through Leo, and we were chatting, and it was Larry. And I told him about my history and actually growing up in the Black Rock Desert. Well, it turned out, and this is not anything, no secret, but Larry he really loved the Black Rock Desert. And I told him my father was an archaeologist and geologist, that I knew a lot about the area, and Larry was instantly intrigued and instantly kind of like, I need to, be your friend because I have so many questions. And so Larry and I became friends from that point on. And he really was looking for advice about the environment, which I found to be really cool, that he wasn't, just like, I didn't really I couldn't even conceptualize what Burning Man was at that point. It just kind of seemed like a bigger camping trip. But then cut to the next year, I had become friends with a lot of these people, and Leo said, you've just got to come. You've got to go. 95, I guess. And so I, as a 25-year-old, I remember saying, screw it, I'll go. So I remember throwing some khaki shorts and a couple t-shirts, just camping gear, maybe a couple sundresses, into my car, the middle of the night, no less. And I drove out there. I know that land like the back of my hand. And so I drove out, and I found the camp, which was, and I had been invited to camp with Will and Crimson and that whole clan. And yeah, so there I was. I set up my little tent.
What year was that? You said 95?
Yeah, 95.
Oh, okay.
I think it was 95. I don't think it was 94. Yeah. And so I'm pretty sure it was 95.
Okay.
So I set up my little tent, and the sun rose, and when you're in a little tent and the sun rises at 6 a.m., you have to get up.
You wake up. Oh yeah.
And I zipped open my tent, and here, walking across the playa, was a little person And this little person had little tiny chaps on and nothing else.
Didn't see that when you were camping with your dad.
Never.
Except without the mushrooms.
And this little person had a regular sized penis. And he looked at me, he said, "Good morning." And he just kind of kept walking with his little chaps on. And I remember thinking, it was just such a mind blowing, like wild thing. I, of course, as you can probably assume, was accustomed to abnormal. My parents had a lot of wild artistic friends. So yeah, I never saw that little person again, but I'm not even sure if that
were
little
they
person
real?
existed.
Yeah.
I know, exactly. And yeah, then that first year was actually pretty tricky. I remember Will and Crimson sort of sitting there, and they were the guard dogs. Because there was no structure to the city, really. I mean, maybe a little bit, but like I remember there being kind of a formed center, but everyone just camped where they were camping.
Mm-hmm.
There were maybe a few thousand people, and I remember Will and Crimson, yelling at everyone, "No driving on the playa, no driving in the playa." And to me, that wasn't my vibe. That wasn't my jam. So I wasn't like a big rule enforcer, or nor did I want to control everything. So I sort of strayed away from them in general. Like, I really adore them as friends now and all over the years. But so I just remember wandering around, and it was a whole group of people that clearly were this group of people that I had already sort of started delving into in the Bay Area. As in, they were artists, mostly just artists. Like, no one was dressing up intentionally. That's just the way they were. There were a few, I think, the first theme camp, as it were. This is always kind of argued. But
Okay,
for
what
me,
would be your vote for the first theme camp? Because there's been a
was
number
Christmas
of.
camp.
Okay.
And for me, because that was my first year, it was no, everybody else was just doing their thing. But here you came upon this camp where they had put out white quilt batting on the playa so it looked like snow, and they had these crappy gifts that they'd give you that was like a whole bunch of things kind of glued together, and they were playing horrible Christmas music the whole time, and they'd give you like
Fruitcake
horrible
and eggnog.
yeah, and it was all curdled and gross. And
But okay, this is one of my questions because this was what, like, was it Memorial Day or something, or was it actually Labor Day?
it was always Labor
It was
Day.
always Labor Day. Oh, because I think Memorial Day was like the Baker Beach, and then when it went to the playa, it was Labor Day, right? Yeah. Okay. So, I mean, Labor Day, like, where do you get eggnog from? I mean, were
Right?
they planning this from like 9 months before, and they're like, I'm gonna buy a bunch of eggnog and put it in my freezer, and then like freeze it for 9 months,
Really, such a good question. I have no idea where
yeah,
they got all that crappy eggnog. I never drank it.
yeah. Okay. Well, I know Stuart Mangrum had a beef about the first theme camp because he was like, no, the first theme camp was my tiki bar, you know. And then talking to Miss P, P Siegel, I mean, she was
Yeah.
talking about like her and Harley. She's like, no. Like, we had the first theme camp like when we came out in like 1990 or something, and it was like a Bedouin kind of camp thing, and they had like she had made this big like hummus kind of platter, but like it made it look like this like desert scene, and like I don't know.
Well, that was before my time.
Yeah.
And those, Miss P and Stewart, and they were all doing stuff, before.
So okay,
But
this is the information I have about Christmas camp. Uh,
yeah.
uh, well, I have it was 1993,
Oh,
but
I think they came out for a couple years. If I could be wrong though.
yeah. And then okay, so some of the people involved: Peter Doty, Lisa Archer, Michael Lyons, started by
Yes.
Amanda Marshall, who never went to Burning Man or something. So,
Yes.
the camp
Well,
next to Chris Radcliffe, I guess, who got really pissed off at them because I guess they were blaring Christmas music the whole time.
there wasn't. You have to keep in mind there was no rave camps. There was no one really playing amplified music that much.
Though that's the
And
thing I think that kids today it's like they don't understand what it's like. But it's just a music festival. It's like like it's not Coachella. But it's like yeah, I mean there were a number of years before like the first rave camp showed up. Like I think it was like 94 or something. Like Larry invited some like rave promoter DJ guy to come. I forget what his name was.
well, the first rave camp I recall was not even really part of Burning Man. It was you'd have to drive a mile or so, maybe
Yeah.
a couple miles out. And I'm not sure who invited those ravers, but they had a dome and they were playing, dance music, and you'd have to take some sort of vehicle out to it. So and it was fun. And I remember being topless. It's really different now as well.
Well,
Um,
yeah.
because we were all naked, but we were naked because we it was hot. and
And you can be.
and I really, that wasn't a stretch for me because I spent so much of my existence out there being naked,
Mhm.
but not in front of 2,000 people. So I recall kind of having a couple things. I recall being a little proprietary. And I remember thinking, who are all these freaks in my land? Like, to
Hmm.
me, because no one else ever wanted to go out there, it was my land, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the Paiutes, of course, they were always first, but
Oh, yeah.
and the Washoe. But I had to let go of that, you know. I had to really let go of a lot of things that first year. I had to let go of um a lot of judgment. I had to let go of the land. It was no longer gonna be my land,
Mm-hmm.
uh, or a place that was full of peace and serenity, and a place that no one wanted to go to. And it was a struggle. I remember a couple nights of that time. We only went out for really 3 or 4 days. Like, we weren't out there for 2 weeks.
Yeah, it was like a long weekend back then.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was just a long weekend. But
That's
um
interesting. That must have been, yeah, like just imagine you sitting there, like this kind of transformation, be like, yeah, like, wait a minute, like this is my private playground. Like, what are you like?
yeah, what are you people doing here?
Yeah, you're ruining it.
Yeah. And I was really worried about, the trash and the gas that I saw people dumping on. I mean, they were dumping intentionally, but you're spilling a gas can, it spills, or you're filling. I definitely tried to make a point of ex- expressing to people this is not a wasteland. During the winter, the birds migrate here. A massive amount of wildlife comes through this area. Please protect it. Please protect it. So, and at one point, I recall going out to I had to go out to open playa quite often that year just to get that peace back that I knew. And I recall running out to the open playa away from camp, and I watched all this trash and all these little bits of plastic fly across the playa.
Wow.
And I went directly to Larry and I said, Larry, this is not cool. We have to do something about this. you have to do something about this. That trash is just going to keep on going, and it's going to ruin this pristine environment. I mean, it wasn't pristine. There were dumps along the side, and but the open playa itself, as you know, it's so special. And so, sort of because of me and my father, I believe the first trash fence was put up. Because my dad, at that point, Larry was kind of consulting with my dad as well. They had become friends. And so the first trash fence, which I have mixed feelings about, I was grateful because I felt like it was catching the trash, but also all of a sudden there was this barrier that was keeping people in and out. Yeah.
So was it the trash fence went up because of their commitment to like leaving no trace, or was it kind of like a permit stipulation kind of thing for the BLM?
It might have been both, but I feel like I was a little part of it, at least, to make them aware that, that something needs to happen.
Well, it's just kind of funny the evolution of things as time goes by. I mean, nowadays, like people like just entering Burning Man, they read the 10 principles and they're just like, oh, these were just this is just how it is. It always was such. And it's like, no, there was like a many years there where it's like we were kind of evolving along and experimenting, and like I said, like one part of it, the whole leave no trace thing. It's like it wasn't there from the beginning. I mean, I think like definitely I was talking to John Lott, like with cacophony, like leave no trace was definitely one of their kind of like principles, and they always tried to, like, whenever they would like use some bunker or some sort of space for a party, like they tried to like clean it up and like, leave it. But I think when it comes to like going out to the Black Rock Desert, I just know some of my personal experiences, like in the beginning, tell the story about when we went in '96, we and my brother, like we're used to camping, right? And so it was like, what do you do when you go camping? Like, we brought a bunch of firewood, and it's like you dig a hole, you make a fire pit.
Yeah.
It's like you have a fire, and then what do you do when you leave? It's like, well, you bury it, right? As like, as a good camper, but now we're like, yeah, no, we buried our trash on the playa, essentially. Like,
yeah.
It's just like different places have different considerations. I mean, it's just not like a public campground with like a fire ring or circle where it's like you're supposed to do that. Like, or dump your embers here, or
Embers would be one thing, but it was definitely, I don't recall people intentionally leaving their stuff or trash, but
mm-hmm.
you know what it's like, even after 3 or 4 days out there and you're hot, you're tired and your food's gone and you have this much water and you're kind of like, what do we do with all this trash? I mean, it was not as intentional as it is now. And
Mm-hmm.
I, and I, but I do think people, because it is sort of a blank canvas, it's not sort of a blank canvas, it's totally a blank canvas out there.
Mm.
I think people were trying. I like to think people were trying to clean up.
Yeah.
But it was interesting that first year, in that I recall, even in my frustration at being all these people being on my land, I recall a spark of absolute and total inspiration. And as to, upping my game in a lot of ways, upping my game as an artist. I came from an artistic family, upping my game as a steward of the land, upping my game as a, um, you know, looking at that event as a place to express myself. And who do I want to be? What do I want to do? It felt, as in the environment, it felt completely open.
Well,
And
horizon expanding, one could say.
and the environment was already safe and comfortable for me and was home. I always kind of laugh when people say welcome home. I've stopped saying you have no idea, like this truly is my home, but no need to like tell people. I mean,
You're in my home, god damn
yeah,
it.
I've let go of that after 30 something years, 31. I don't know how many years I've
Yeah.
been going. So 95. How many years is that? I don't even know.
Oh god, yeah.
So,
Well, okay, well, two things. Like one, you said you're 25 when you first went. I think that's kind of like the normal age. Like I think I was like 25, 26, like when I went. Like even like nowadays, I don't know. I think that's probably kind of like the general kind of entry point for people like getting into
you
like
think
Burning Man. I mean, I'm sure there's
like the
nowadays
younger
like
people?
yeah, now that well, I mean, nowadays it's this bigger thing and there's regionals everywhere. I think there's people of all ages. It's like oh, going for the first time, But it seems like early or mid 20s. It's like it's like I mean, if I was to look at the census like every year, I remember it was like I went to like a rabbit hole and I was going pouring through all the censuses like over all the years and like it seemed like the vast like the bulk of the people who go or like the largest cohort, I think it's something like 25 to 35. I mean, there's always people who
Huh.
go from like there's young people, there's old people, there's people of all ages, and it's kind of shifted and changed over the years, But like, I think there's always been like the largest, like if you pick like a 10-year, like like the 25 to 35, 35 to 45, 45 to 55, like I think it's like the 25 to 35 was always kind of in like either the top or the one of the top two, you know.
That makes sense to me. A,
Yeah,
you're
yeah.
kind of you're old enough to be able to do all the things. B, you have the resources. Hopefully at 25 you have a job
Better than
and
18. Like, yeah.
a car.
Yeah.
And at that point, you're probably maybe expressing yourself more sexually and artistically and all the things, or wanting to expand your horizons as a 20-year-old,
Mm-hmm.
25-year-old. So, and yeah, I have learned so much from Burning Man.
Mm-hmm. Oh, and then
Um,
well, before we get to, just one other thing I was thinking about, because we were saying like, oh, everybody was nude, or a lot of people are like topless, or they body painted, they cover themselves in mud and whatever. Um, One of the big differences I think between then and now is not just the technology of like cameras, but also like internet access, like phone, like cellular connections. I mean, in my experience, and like I remember like when there was like the first like internet access, and I remember being so angry. Like,
yeah,
what are you doing? Like it's like, well, then people are like, well, some people got to work. I'm like, well, then don't go to Burning Man. like, well, you know, like this is a commitment to go out to the middle of nowhere to have no contact, like, and then there would be all these like rumors of like things that would happen and people like because nobody really knew. And I remember one of the art projects I had at my camp was I made this, it was called the rumor mill. And it was just like a big like board and it had like 9 different topics. And then it has like a plastic sheet over it. And then like these pens and you can like, and you could like, it has a like read a rumor, like leave a rumor, you know?
that's
So
genius.
yeah, so it'd be like politics, sports, like disasters, and so people would just kind of like write stuff and like, oh, this person died, oh, that person died, and people would kind of go up to them, it's like, oh my God, you like Ronald Reagan died, it's like
Are these real?
no, yeah. And then I remember one year like the Princess Diana, like, oh, Princess Diana
The
died, like,
Princess
oh,
Diana. Remember
yeah,
that?
right, and then like leaving
And
and
then it was true.
like, oh, that really happened.
Yeah, it was.
But I think that's why like so you don't really see as much nudity on the playa nowadays is because like there's a camera in everybody's phone, you know. And so I think there's enough like nervous people. Like I remember, God, what was it? Go to some camp, like a whiskey something, and they had like a pole, and they were like, oh yeah, come, somebody come and like, you know, use the pole, you know, do the stripper pole, and nobody would do it, and everyone was kind of like looking around at everybody else like, you gonna do it, you're gonna do it, you know. And I think people back in the day, they're just like, oh yeah, you know, just gotta jump up and do it, whatever. Like, but now people, I think, kind of like looking around like, is someone gonna, like, you know, like capture this? Am I gonna be in some underwear on the internet? You know, like,
You know, Andy, the irony too, because you probably experienced this as well going in 96.
uh,
Initially, we, the motto, the mantra was no spectators.
mm-hmm.
Remember?
Yep.
So we were really frowned upon to even take photos, or there were a few people, Chuck Serino, you know,
Mm-hmm.
Doug Wellman, with cameras, but they were also kind of freaky. And so, and they were filmmakers. And so it's felt a little bit accessible, or, you know, acceptable. And it was very much that it was a safe place. Um, and I guess I never thought about that. The fact that there are so many cameras now and so many sparkle ponies and so many influencers, and you can't really do that stuff anymore without it ending up on the internet. And, you know, over the years, I also never, um, I was never really taught shame as a kid. I was never taught to, um, be ashamed of my body.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was taught to express myself. Follow my bliss was my dad's big thing. Follow your bliss. Um, so 95 was that first year for me. Then 96, I um yeah, so it's so it is tricky, the brain, what the brain does. Like, was that the year? But I then had, I guess that first year, 95, um someone said to me, I think it was Robert Burke or somebody, said, you need a project. Everybody needs a project out here. And so they brought me out to Pepe's Lingam. And Pepe said, oh, yes. Oh, hello, Justin. You are, of course, welcome. You know, start putting mud on. And so we had these big buckets of mud, and we were slapping mud on this big lingam. And I became friends with all the artists that were working on Pepe's opera. Um, and then, you know, watched that lingam burn. Um, and then the next year, I was part of the crew, and Pepe had a meeting at his warehouse at Arto, and there were a group of us, and he had just come back from India, and he was telling us, I mean, he was so full of passion and fervor, and he had created this incredible, you know, adventure and story of Empress Zoe, who descended from the underworld. And these were all in kind of an amalgamation of like other myths, creation myths, and stories that he had learned um on his travels down the Ganges. And, you know, and we just sat wide-eyed and were hook, line, and sinker, like, yes, Pepe. And that is when I met Paradox and Morgan and Tirza and you know, Twan. I don't know, was he around in Christine Heath, and, you know, all that whole crew. Um and I will never forget, during that meeting, he talked about finding the Empress. And in my heart, um And this doesn't happen to me that often in life, but a voice came to me. I'm almost going to cry because it's so powerful. And it said, "You are the Empress." And I remember kind of fighting it, but it was so powerful. And so shortly after, I came to Pepe and I said, "Pepe, I am your Empress." And he said, "Oh, Justin, we shall see. You know, do you think that? Okay, perhaps we shall see." And I just kept coming to him. And then I was in art school at the time, and I was a metal minor. I majored in film, but I was working in metal. And I created this gorgeous crown with flames and jewels. And I brought it to Pepe. He loved, he was such a artist, 150% artist. And he looked at the crown and I said, "Pepe, this is my crown. Do you see? I am your Empress." And he said, well, let's think about this, Justin. You are a hermaphrodite, and you will have to get a cock. And I said, "Okay." And he said, and then it was really starting to kind of cement itself. And I didn't even know what the spirit, which I really truly believe now when I'm working with my higher guide, my spirit guides, but the spirit and my guide kept pushing me towards this. I'd never kind of done anything like that. Well, I had done drama a lot in school. In elementary school, we had this guy, Ed Gilwhite, and we had this whole drama troupe. So I was kind of a performer anyways. But so Pepe said, "Okay," and I think he probably brought it to the crew, and the crew agreed. And then he gave me some money to go to Good Vibrations and get myself a cock. Nothing too big, Justin. It must look natural. So I went to Good Vibrations and I told them of course, the general store of sex toys. And I said, "I need a cock to look like a strap-on, to look like a hermaphrodite." And they, of course, didn't blink an eye. And they said, "Okay." And they
Well,
got me
let's show this. Here's the selection. Come on in.
here's your selection of penises, cocks, dildos. And so I got this reasonable looking white, strap-on. And then I progressed to make myself a bra that I wore out of metal that had leather straps. And then I had the strap on and my crown, and I just embodied the character. And that year, I came out early and was part of this group of people that were unlike any other humans I'd ever met. Paradox was truly a kind of our, Pepe was, of course, our leader, but he was kind of doing logistics and art, building the temple. We all built the lingam that year together. We were like thick as thieves. Stephanos was my dark lord, the lord of the underworld. And we had a goat named Mephistopheles, who
An actual
Stephanos.
goat.
Yeah, we got a goat. This poor goat. Kate was another part of the crew, and Kate dyed the goat pink. Like, I think we rented this goat from some farm nearby. And the whole premise was we were going to take the goat up on the stage, and the goat she dyed it pink. She was kind of in charge of the goat, and we tried to get this goat up on the stage because there was just a little narrow kind of playa walkway going up to the lingam, to this little stage, and the goat had nothing to do with it. So, but we kind of rehearsed a little bit. There was the 7 deadly sins, And there were people dressed as sloth, and they were kind of drudging around, and there were people dressed as gluttony, and they were, doing their gluttony thing, and all the sins. And yeah, then that performance happened, and I truly did channel something from the underground. A lot of it it went on for hours, first of all. And we chanted, and it very much felt like something out of a Hieronymus Bosch painting. And I arrived on a chariot with some Rottweiler dogs carrying me out, and I had this, my outfit of the bra and I had it, and my father. So my father, I told him I'm doing this performance, and he was so proud.
Wow, that's
Unlike, right?
awesome.
Yeah, really, it's a testament to the unusual nature of my family, and I'm so.
It's like, darling, you picked out a wonderful cock to wear.
Yeah, not only that, but he came before the performance, and Jason Norelli at that time was painting everyone's bodies, right, with these tribal. He was great at it. Tribal designs, and Jason painted part of my body, but my dad wanted to paint my body for the performance, so he painted one of my legs. I think it was my right leg. I guess the Bedouins have a tradition where if you paint your entire one leg, I think it's the right leg, black, it connects you to the underworld. So my whole right leg was black, and I had all this tribal painting, and I just embodied it. And I remember, circling the tower and looking out at the crowd of people, and Stephanos takes me off of the chariot and takes me to the platform. We're kind of going up to the platform, and the chaos of it. I mean, you have to keep in mind there's 100 people all around. There's people dressed like cockroaches in these incredible cockroaches outfits, and they're scurrying around. And Adonna Divine, she was gluttony, I think, and she had a bowl of like blood, and somehow she got animal parts, and she was like rubbing the blood and eating this thing. There was blood all over her, and so Stephanos takes me to the top of the tower, and I am sort of mocking fellatio with this little cock that I have on the top of the tower, and we're doing this whole performance, and we didn't realize it, but someone had lit the tower on fire while we were up there.
Ooh. Yeah.
And we were in such a state, just this, channeling state of, I don't even know how to, it's hard to describe it because it was so powerful. But I remember Paradox coming up to the side, and he said, come down. He was kind of trying to make a part of the performance. And then I could see flames lapping up on the side, and I was like, oh, fuck. And so Stephanos and I came down, and Devil's Delight, Fire Tonight, and there was like opera singers screaming, and that went on for another hour. And then I kind of felt like, okay, this is the time. And I let out this wild warrior chant, and for some reason it just stopped everything. And I took my crown off, and I threw it. So then the lingam was, of course, burning, and I threw it into the fire.
Oh.
And at that point, everyone went crazy. in a fervor of like demonic, I mean, it wasn't really demonic per se, but it was definitely underworld darkness. But it felt like I personally was ascending and coming out of something that was, royalty, like out of that into the reality of the world. And then everyone came in and danced around the fire, and people were dancing with me, and it was a night. And then shortly after that, Helco burned. So back in that day as well, there wasn't,
Everything burned.
400 things.
Yeah.
What?
Back then, like everything burned. Even people were just like, I don't want to bring all this stuff back with me, so I'm just going to light it on fire.
Yeah, not
Yeah.
as much that year,
Well, later
but I
years,
remember
like,
the
yeah.
next year, the hay bales, everyone was lighting those hay bales on fire and tents.
Yeah.
And but 95, I remember wandering back to camp and Paradox, and we were all kind of just sitting around in a stupor. And you're right, though, everything was kind of on fire, I guess. But I looked over and we had made a little hay bale hut for the goat, and it was on fire.
Oh no. Oh
And I could
no.
hear the goat out there going, "Mah, mah," and
Oh.
so I ran out and I pulled off these burning bales of hay, and the poor goat kind of leapt into my arms, and I slept with the goat that night. I brought it into my tent. I don't even know how I slept. I probably didn't sleep. It wasn't, it was an all-night endeavor, but um so the wild part really was I wasn't prepared to be royalty.
Yeah. Well, okay. A couple of things.
Yeah.
I always kind of tell people like Burning Man is like one of the few places you can go and be completely sober, but you feel like you're tripping.
True.
Right. I mean, and then also I remember like when I was in high school, it's like, yeah, I remember doing some theater, and I just remember just like the high of like, it's like you do a performance and afterwards you're just like, yeah, we just did a man for all seasons,
Yes.
you're just like, and there's just this high. So kind of combining these two, where it's just like we're doing this performance like at Burning Man, and even if that's big, if he were sober, like which, I'm sure Pepe goes on stuff, I mean, I'm sure there's, I don't know, you tell me, if people were like, on anything, but it's just like, just that experience alone must, I mean, it just be just mind bending.
Mind bending.
Like,
Life
yeah,
changing. I
yeah.
didn't really realize how life changing it would be. I don't recall personally. I wasn't into, so I grew up again with a family who was very openly drug
Hmm.
comfortable. And I don't recall being on any drugs.
How did Pepe
I don't,
feel about that? Like, would
we
he,
really, we didn't drink in camp. We
uh-huh.
were there for a reason.
Like it was like
And
a serious endeavor. Like I could see how he'd be like, no, I don't want you to take away from that, right?
yes. And I don't remember him ever making a stand about that, but it was very much, we weren't there to party.
Mm.
We were there to embody this group of, underworld entities. And we did, every day had a meeting. Paradox would lead these chanting, wild, you know, um, groups of, like us together, really becoming closer than I'd ever experienced a group of people coming. We were sleeping together, we were shitting together, we were, sharing everything. We were making goat milk. Stefanos would make goat cheese from the goat that he would, because he was, he was Greek, and so it was so natural. And it really felt like nothing I'd ever experienced before growing up in Reno. Most of my friends were pretty conservative, and um yeah, that amalgamation of worlds out there too, of
Well,
having.
also, like, just thinking about like I know like in Coyote's book, and he's talking about like like the interactions with like the local community there in Gerlach, and I'm just imagining the person who like guys rented the goat from? Like, I mean, I can just imagine the negotiations. So like, so Bessie here, you're not going to use her in one of your satanic rituals, are you? You're like, oh no, oh no, 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 no.
I can't even imagine where.
Because this is like what everybody would imagine. It's just like you were just a bunch of devil worshippers, and you're going out there and you're eating babies doing human sacrifice or whatever they're thinking. You know, like
Yeah. And that after that year, well, let's cut back to, so the next day, I remember vaguely kind of wandering into camp, and people were dropping to their feet and praying to me, Empress, Empress Zoe. So it was all of a sudden this new empress,
mm-hmm.
and I had to instantly embody this entity, and it changed me as a woman.
Mm-hmm.
It changed me as a human, as a performer, as it pretty much really made me have to have a new security and be not an example, because it was very different paradigm than like, some other empress, but it was profound in my world. I remember there, a man, Al Honig is his name, and he was riding around on this little bike, and it had a seat on the front, and he said, Empress, take your throne. And so he put me on the seat of this bike and rode me around town, and people were giving me gifts, and again, groups of people bowing, and it was wild. It was really wild.
Wow. So then after 96, I mean, so have you been like every single year or have you like taken time off and
No, every year.
wow.
Except for 2016, I had cancer. I had
Oh,
colon cancer.
oh.
And of course I couldn't go. But
Well,
what I did, I'm so bad. I was here where I am presently, and at my friend's property, and he has a dome. There's a dome. That white thing is a dome.
oh, okay.
And I was so, sad that I couldn't go. And so what I decided was I would just tell people I was going. And so I took a picture of someone had posted a picture of the gate in, this is 2016. So, and I took a picture of that and I said, guess what, guys? I decided to come last minute. And then I had my friend take a picture of me in the dome DJing, and I said, yeah, I'm DJing at the camp, right? I didn't specify. So people were going around the playa saying, did you hear Justin's on playa? Have you seen Justin? She's here, right? I thought, why break a streak? But yeah, I have always said to myself, if the universe opens up a span of time and I have the resources and I have the chutzpah, I will go to Burning Man. And every year, clearly with a lot of help from friends. Thank you, Marion. Thank you, Larry. Thank you, Larry. Thank you, Marion. Thank you, Stephen Raspa. Thank
Mm-hmm.
you, all the people who have helped make it my home again and have truly brought me back all those years.
So what have you been doing? Because at the opera, I mean, like Pepe did the opera what until like the early 2000s or something, right? Like,
Yeah, so
were you part of the opera or did you kind of transition to other things?
good question. So the next year I was part of the opera. I was a moon queen. And I kind of held this, I had tumbleweeds in my hair, and I had a big white dress on and a mirror, and I would go around and reflect people. I wasn't an integral part of that opera, but I was kind of glad to be just, a moon queen. And then the next year I thought, I'm ready for something new. I do recall there was a girl, and this was early on, and we all were cruising around the playa, and there was a girl, and she came out and she had this little blue dress on, and she said, "I'm Alice in Wonderland." And we all sort of said, "Okay, you can be Alice in Wonderland if you want." And she just played the whole rest of the day. She, would say, "Where's Toto?" And she was just into this character. And I remember kind of being annoyed, but also saying, huh, so I could be whatever the hell I want out here in this reality. What do I want to be? What do I want to do? And it was at that point where I realized, like, this is truly a platform to express yourself in any way you want to. I have over the years, done things that I would have never done in the default world. Before the arrival of Empress Zoe, I decided that I was going to promote the event, even though, there weren't a lot of events that year, but I went into the radio station and I was friends with John Hell. And we decided that we would do this radio show, and we would, there was a little shack that the radio station was in, and we would pretend that we were having sex in we were having sex in the radio booth. And so we started out kind of coy, and then I would say, "Oh, you like it like that? Like, you mean right under the kneecap like that?" And then we kind of went into this thing, and we were like, I was like completely having an orgasm, and oh my God, yes, John. And then, we were, and we kind of were rocking the shack. And this was during around 6 or 7 o'clock, when everyone's kind of sitting down for dinner at their camps and they're getting ready for the evening. And so we came out, and the little shack was completely surrounded with people who wanted to know if we were indeed having sex in there. And, I flipped open the door, and my hair was all disheveled, and I was like, "Oh," and, so it was a big thing. It was pretty funny. I still have people this day ask me, like, did you really have sex with, but, and then I also decided that we should have a mud wrestling match that year before the arrival of Empress Zoe. And so a friend of mine, we went down the playa and we did this whole wrestling match thing, mud wrestling. So silly.
Wait a minute. Was that okay? I remember in '96 there was like a bunch of water on the playa, and there's a bunch of naked people, and they're all kind of like rolling around each other. And I think I might have even like taken a picture with my little like film camera, whatever. But I just remember just being like, the first time there, just being like, what all these crazy people did, and I was like, okay. And then I just remember like finding out like months or years later, they'd be like, oh yeah, a bunch of people got hepatitis.
Did they really? I remember that. I think that was after a rain.
Oh.
And after that mud pit, that wasn't me doing the mud wrestling. But
Well, yeah.
we were but it was just my friend Elizabeth and I, who was kind of pissed that I got her into this thing, but we had a fun time. But yeah, that was crazy. I remember finding a girl who was clearly way high on drugs, and she was like some primordial being stuck in the mud, like bleh, bleh, bleh. Like mud was, and we were kind of like, this girl's gonna die unless we get her out of the mud. And we picked her out of the mud, and someone took care of her. But yeah, we had taken a little field trip. So as I said before, I knew the land like the back of my hand. I know where all the little springs are.
Mm-hmm.
And we had taken a field trip to one of the hot springs, and we'd spent the day in the cool artesian well, bathing and getting clean and just relaxing. And we came back out after that rain, and there was no way in hell I was getting in that mud pit with all those people. Yeah, that was a wild scene, wasn't it?
Yeah. So nowadays at Burning Man, I mean, what do you spend your time doing like on the playa now? I mean,
whatever the hell I want.
Yeah.
I have over the years. So I really, when we started having themes, so what I've intentionally tried to do was I've tried to sort of camp with various different camps so that I meet new people. and I experienced new things. And I have also the themes. I've taken the themes, like family, American Family, or American
American
Dream, I
Dream,
guess was,
yeah.
yeah. That year I decided, well, I'm probably not gonna have kids. So, and there were those shows like Kate Plus 8 on, and I thought, I'm just gonna have a ton of kids out there. And so I went on Craigslist and got a bunch of free baby shit, a couple strollers, a bunch of baby dolls, and I recorded baby sounds, and I had these strollers, and we would I had a recording of the babies screaming. You never really saw babies out there, right?
Yeah.
So it was like this kind of weird. We would wheel all our strollers into a bar, and I wheel this, a friend of mine, my gay husband, because I was going to go to thrift stores and get baby dolls, and I said to him, yeah, I'm going to have some babies, and he said, oh, I can give you babies. And I was like, honey, you can't give me babies. He said, no, I can give you babies. His mother had this huge doll collection, and he didn't know what to do with these dolls. Some of those weird dolls, like the kind of from the 70s, that were about 2 feet tall and had kind of like, they were
Oh,
plastic. Anyways, he gave me maybe 20 dolls,
wow.
and we took him out to the playa. And like I said, I would wheel him in from art cars and yell out, please don't kill my baby. And and people were like, you guys are our nightmare, nightmare moms. Or I would pretend to, or maybe not pretend, to be drunk and be like, can you take care of my baby? I just can't do it today. And I'd wheel the baby over and leave it, and I'd come back, and it would have a PBR taped to one hand and some pubic hair drawn on, and some, electrical tape pasties. And there was this little punk rock couple who I had them babysit the baby, and I came back in, and they said, she grabbed the baby and she said, you are not a fit mother. I am going to take this baby from you. And I said, oh, you're right. Take the baby.
It's like, I got
They
a whole
brought that
trunk
baby
full of
back
other
every
ones.
year.
Don't worry about it. Like, yeah.
Yeah, they brought that baby back every year too. So
Wow,
I
that's
feel
funny.
like my contribution, I could talk to you for 10 hours about all the wild, funny things I've
Yeah.
done, but has truly been performance. And I have been to be kind of a culture jammer, as it were, and have been part of quite a few different girl gangs out there. A
Hmm.
girl gang, a couple friends of mine started, Kimmy Leary and Bryn Cortez, a girl gang called the Space Cowgirls. And we
Oh,
would go
yeah.
around giving people fashion violations, and we had little bullhorns, and we would go into Bianca's Smut Shack. Remember Bianca's Smut
Oh,
Shack?
yeah. Yeah.
Those camps, the early day camps, were just so special.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and we would have little bullhorns, and we'd see a guy with socks and Tevas, and we would say, that's a fashion violation, and we'd give him a little. It was all playful. Um, and then after that, some girl friends and I created a girl gang called the Dirty Little Bitches, which we thought was hilarious. And we went around with spray cans, and we stenciled everything to say dirty little bitch on it. And we didn't realize at the time, but it was kind of an empowering thing for a lot of people,
Hmm.
to be given the authority to just be a dirty little bitch. We all have a dirty little bitch in us. And the irony is that we would stencil, people would say, I'd have them bend over, and I'd say, okay. And I'd kind of dry hump them a little bit. And I was so lascivious. It was great. So glad I got all that out of my system. And I was slutty, and I was just, I just was expressing myself the way that I was, I cherish all that now.
Mm-hmm.
But the paint, we would use just spray paint, and they'd say, is this spray paint? My
Does it wash
friend who,
off?
yeah, does this wash off? I'd say, it's soy based, bitch, bend over. And then we would kind of consensually, and then I'd blow it off. Let me give you a blow job, and I'd blow it. And then it would stick on their skin. I had a girl come to me a couple weeks later at some party afterwards, and she said, you, and she said, look at my leg, and it was tanned in, dirty little bitch, into her leg.
Oh, that's awesome.
It was awesome.
I like that. It's like we were consensual, like ish. I was like, yeah, those were early days. Like.
Yeah, it was
Well,
really.
also, I interviewed Crow a couple of weeks ago, Ranger Crow, and just the whole going through the whole like how like rangers work and this and that, and then I would just bring up the whole idea of like consent, and then there was like Bureau of Erotic Discourse and stuff like that, where I was like, it's like, okay, so if groups like Bed can get to people and kind of moderate their behavior, or at least have them think about consensus and stuff, it's like you can kind of like deal with these things on the front end, so then you guys as rangers don't have to deal with it on the back. And he
Yes.
was like, exactly.
Well, and that's how things like the Orgy Dome
Mm-hmm.
were, have been successful. I don't think people realize you can't just wander into the Orgy Dome.
Yeah, I've been hearing about this lately. Yeah.
You have to go through a whole ring of. I've actually never even been in the Orgy Dome, but
I've only
I
heard word of
tried.
it. Yeah.
And you have to have a partner. You have to sign some things, like you have to explicitly say that you're not going to go in there and be a non-consensual pervert. Like,
Mm-hmm.
most of people are perverts. Like they're, in the, I mean, I consider myself a
We
pervert,
all have our
right?
inner
Like,
pervert, sure.
yeah, we all
Yeah.
have our inner dirty little bitch, our inner little pervert. And the glory of Burning Man is that we can go out and express that in a world where sex is so taboo. And there's so much scrutiny about it. And we're supposed to hide our bodies and hide our sexuality. That's one thing that I was never taught. Consequently, though, because I was given so much liberty with I was a virgin till I was 19, because I was like, my family wasn't like, you have to, they didn't set those rules. I set them for myself because of the freedom. But it felt good to see women who had never been called a dirty little bitch, or to have a little stencil of a dirty little bitch on them, and to be able to, kind of wander out in the world and
I think
have.
I just thought of a new stencil for you. Maybe you could try this year, stenciling on people.
Which one?
Consensual pervert.
Ooh, that's a good one. That's a super good one.
Like I said, we're
Consensual
all a
pervert.
pervert, but it's consensual, right?
Yes. Yeah, I think too, back in the day, one thing one of the 1,000 things I've learned about Burning Man is how to navigate a myriad of different energies.
Mm-hmm.
And one thing that we were all pretty strong at doing is saying no. And you were confronted with people that weren't just perverts, but they were high perverts.
Mm-hmm. Oh
Um,
yeah.
and you had to be able to really, me personally, I guess, stand up for yourself and be able to kind of push, you know, those people out of the way, and to be, protect yourself,
Mm-hmm.
because there was some weird shit going on. And I remember, it taught me how to navigate the world at large
Well,
by.
also there was like you had a whole community of people around you too, right? So it's like it wasn't like, oh, I'm just like in a crowd of perverts and no, if something happens, no one's going to help me. It's like you can reasonably assume, it's like, oh no, I'm with a bunch of friends, and if something happens, it's like they've got my back.
Yes.
Yeah.
And believe it or not, after, even in a group that small, you all got to know each other. You met 200 or 300 friends
Mm-hmm.
those first few years. And when you did something like Empress Zoe, there was a certain amount of fame that carried through. No one knows who I am now, which is fine.
Mm-hmm.
But or maybe they do. There's still a few people, but uh I am excited to potentially have the kids learn about these early wild times. And I feel like I am being interviewed more and more for the old days of Burning Man. And I love that I want people to know, how primal it was, and that in my short, it is short, really, 30 years of Burning Man, it has been a complete evolution of a society.
Mm-hmm.
We started with fire and drumming. Remember all the drumming?
Oh yeah, yeah.
And no generators, and just tents and taking care of each other. And then, that first inkling of, oh shit, Joe Bullock burned down his tent, and everyone was kind of like, oh shit, maybe we shouldn't have as much fire around. And it just kind of evolved from one thing to another. Jim Mason brought out the generators and made the ice cube, the
Oh yeah, I remember that.
ice
The
clock
clocks. Yeah.
thing, which was amazing. Yeah, I feel like also just the glorious fact that I have been able to encounter and have intimate relationships with um some sexual and not sexual,
Mm-hmm.
with some of the most incredible artists in the world, is something I really savor, and I make
So
myself out to be a big slutty, but I wasn't really that slutty. I just like to think of myself as a little slut. But
So
you know,
I know we're going a little bit long here, but you have some incredible stories. But so how has like Burning Man like impacted or influenced you? I mean, I
ooh,
guess we've kind of gone over some of this.
it's impacted me in that it really has taught me. I remember how to navigate the world, the default world, as we say. Um, it has taught me to endure those shitty days out there where it's so dusty and you're like, why the fuck am I here? You call this a vacation? What is, it teaches you that maybe the next day is going to be a glorious day. And if you
Mm-hmm.
sit in your camp with your friends, you know, um, doing whippets and just laughing in a dust storm, that eventually it's going to be a better day. Um, it's taught me, again, like I said, how to navigate people and their energies. It's taught me that I can pretty much do and express myself however the hell I want to still. It's taught me survival skills that I kind of already had growing up
Yeah.
there, but even more so. It's taught me, this last year was a huge, intense growing experience for me because of the fact that I had always been taught, never go on the playa when it's raining. That was a big rule. Never be on the playa. Um, as a kid in Bruno's, you used to see, there were pictures. Bruno used to have this whole array of pictures of cars that were literally buried on the playa, this far from the top of their
The
hood,
roof. Yeah.
and so
Wow.
being out there and having it rain, I had a few panic attacks, and I typically would, that, what was it, 23 when it rained, I was like, I'm out of here. And I'd been heard rumor that it was going to rain, and I packed up all my stuff and took off
Mm-hmm.
before the
Mm-hmm.
rain, and was kind of screaming at everyone like, we need to get off the playa, and everyone's like, you're tripping, Justin. There's no reason to be so frantic. And I'm like, no, you don't understand. And so last year I got there way early, and I was with Andy Grace. That's kind of where I met you.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought to myself, Justin, you're not out here alone anymore. You are with 80,000 people, and it was a little scary, but I also went over to my neighbor's camp and drank rum, and we play, there was also this sense of surviving an apocalypse. You know, it felt so apocalyptic. And I truly believe that the burners people, it alters them one way or another, but it's also going to make people stronger and able to survive and accept what's coming at us.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, also, I think that there's like a finite limit to it. Like, right? I mean, like you said, like the rain will stop. Things will get better. I mean, it's just like, oh, it's like the rain's coming. It's gonna be a horrible thing. It's like, yeah. But like I mean, I wasn't there in 23, but that's what I heard everyone say. It's just like, you know what? It's like the rains will stop. The playa will dry out. We will get out. I mean, it's not like, you know, like 40 days and 40 nights, and like Noah has to come on the ark, and burners assembled it on 2 by 2 onto the ark, you know.
When you realize too, talking about like the going back to when Lady died, and we all were, you
Hmm.
realize when you stepping out of Burning Man that year, 23, and coming back home and watching the man burn. It was one of the first burns I missed, but watching the man burn from my bed on YouTube and looking and thinking to myself, wow, people did live through that. And the media takes these things and they just run with it
Um,
and they make up all these stories about
yeah,
people are this and that, and they don't realize how tenacious burners are. And the fact is that you bring out twice as much food and an extra tent and extra water and extra booze and extra
yeah,
all of it.
yeah. And it was really like a
And
couple of days extra, right? I mean, it wasn't like they were there for like
yeah,
weeks and weeks, Yeah.
well, and that there is a potential for that. I mean, you hear,
I mean, it
like the
could
worst
happen.
case scenarios, the armed National Guard has to come in, and or the not armed guard but National Guard or
National
whatever
Guard,
has,
yeah.
yeah, has to come in. And at this
But I mean,
point they probably
23 was probably the worst, I mean, that it ever had been, right? I
yeah,
mean, I think there was like I remember watching it here from Hawaii, and there was this hurricane that like made its way up, and it was such an unusual track. And I remember seeing it's like, oh, that's gonna go up towards the Black Rock Desert, like I mean, maybe with climate change and stuff that'll be more frequent, but I don't
yeah.
know. I mean,
Well, and for me also the art, I have just so many incredible visuals in my mind of how people are allowed to express themselves and how people are allowed to process trauma.
mhm.
They're speaking of that hurricane, then the next, I think it was the next year, there was that geez, I wish I could remember names of pieces, but there was a building built out of all the refuse from the hurricane um in the south, and there were all these pieces of wood. And and this
Yeah.
man said, I always try to talk to the artist, and he said this is all stuff we found that had washed up um from the hurricane. And what about the Ukrainians that come from all over the
Oh
world?
yeah.
You
Yeah.
know or not all over the world, they come from Ukraine, but when they made that I'm fine sign
Yeah.
out of
Yeah.
all the street signs that had been shot up, and you know things that just
Yeah.
change you as a person. I That last year, we had decided to drive around right before the dust storm, and
Hmm.
a friend of mine, I have a disabled driving pass, and because of my cancer, and I well, I don't have cancer anymore, it's gone, but
Oh, great.
complications, I
Yeah.
won't get into it. But we drove, and it's amazing to go out there early and to see everything kind of pop up. And we went out in the playa, and I looked over and I said, what's that huge black thing out there? And so my friend Chris and I drove out to this black thing, and it was huge. It was like 60 feet wide and 30 or 40 feet tall, and it was a huge black balloon.
Hmm.
And I was standing there looking, and this woman beelined it out to me, and she said, who are you? I must know you. I had a flower in my hair and pearls on. And she said, I have a music video. I am in this music video and I'm wearing the pearls and the flower. And I said, "Are you from the Ukraine?" And she said, "Yes, this is our piece." And then it dawned on me, big black cloud. This isn't just a big black balloon. This is a big black cloud. And this is what they live under.
Yeah. Wow.
So we instantly fell in love. She told me stories of her son and the bombs and living in the Ukraine that was just being systematically destroyed. And of course we hear about the war, but to hear intimate stories from another human being, this is one was so powerful. When I was done, I took off my flower. I said, "This is your flower," and she got my WhatsApp information. And the next day I got the most profound message from her. Of course, the storm hit maybe an hour after we were there, and it destroyed this big black cloud. It ripped it off its, I remember thinking, it's not really staked down very well, but, those winds came up and it was gone. And she sent me a message and a little video, and she said, "I hope you're well." She said, "Our camp unfortunately was destroyed. It was like an apocalypse." And she said, "And in the whole damn time, I have your flower in my hair." And there's a video of her holding her camp stakes, and she's got this flower in her hair.
Wow.
We haven't even spoken about gifting. And the fact that in this world we're always being taken from, and we're always being asked to we're always being have to pay for our food and have to pay for this
transaction. Yeah,
it's very transactional, and not out there everyone wants to give to you. It's about, come have some fresh lemonade, have this, and those little gifts give me hope in humanity. And I think, not to mention the gift of seeing someone's face, and we are losing that. We're losing talking to each other's faces.
Oh yeah.
And experiencing people, sitting around talking. And I don't know if you've noticed this, but the level and the type of laughter you hear on the playa is drastically different than any laughter and joy that you in the default world. People are genuinely, like, most of the time having the time of their lives and laughing and sharing, talking story, as they say in Hawaii.
Yeah.
And we need that I look to Burning Man as to what's next in our world. We went from fire and burning and drumming to LEDs and generators and motorhomes and blinky lights and not just walking around the playa or biking around the playa. All of a sudden it was too big, so we had to have art cars. So the irony that in this world now we are dealing with cars as being a big problem. There's a lot to be said and looked at as the evolution of our race and us as a people. So
yeah. All right. Well, I think we've gone an hour and a half. This has been amazing. Well, thank you very much.
You are so welcome. I can talk.
Yeah. Something I am thinking about is having some of my guests come back on for a round two. Because it's definitely, I remember like John Law at 2 hours. I was like, okay. I'm not Joe Rogan. We're not going for 3 hours.
I would love it. And Andy Grace actually is doing interviews as well. And she did the same thing. She said, "Justin," she interviewed me for a couple hours, and then she said, I haven't had enough. So I came back for another round and talked more story about all the things. And, you know, it's hard to encapsulate 30 years of Burning Man in an hour and a half. And I'm sure there will be other stories and that come up that I, you know, but yeah, I'd love to. That would be really fun.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for doing this, Andy. Thank you for bringing these stories to the world and to people who are interested and you know, exposing so much of the people that have made it and made it what it is. So I appreciate you.
Thanks.
Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed this show, please subscribe, rate, and review it on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen. The more reviews the show has, the more likely it will even appear in search results. Also, please tell a friend and share this show with anyone that you think might like it. Word of mouth reaches quite far, especially in the Burning Man community. If you would like to contact us, please send an email to shadowofthemanpodcast@gmail.com. You can also follow Shadow of the Man on social media at Facebook, Instagram, Blue Sky, X, and YouTube. The links for all of these are available at shadowoftheman.com. Feel free to use any of these social media accounts to provide any feedback you might have. Your thoughts on the show are greatly appreciated. Thank you, and see you soon for a new episode of The Shadow of the Man.
Thank you for listening to this latest show. We have to make another one, so gotta go. Don't worry, for next month we already have one in the can. Very soon you'll be listening to a new Shadow of the Man.